Well, that long-awaited recession everyone's been calling on for years is certainly knocking on the door as Americans are frantically looking for financial relief as everyone is literally tapped out. No one has any more money. We are now at the highest amount of consumer debt that we've ever had in this country. We literally have no more money. This economy is holding on by a thread right now, and the very people that this economy needs to keep going, as in us, the consumers, again, have no more money. The recent reports that have been released are showing exactly that, and the consumers are starting to step back and they're really monitoring their spending, which again, the economy is feeling in a major way. That's what I want to share with you here in this video, because we all know what happens when we go into an economic contraction or a major recession. As you've heard me talk about for years, I've said this so many times. What happens when the economy falls off a cliff? They print money like it's going out of style, and they pull out the bulldozers and they push it out and say, here, grab a wad of cash. Here, we're going to go up in some helicopters and throw out cash to everybody. Obviously, they don't physically do that, but essentially they do the same thing as they approve these huge packages, these relief packages, and they push all kinds of money out there, and it's a free-for-all for basically everybody. Well, I have this article here. I'm going to pop this up in just a second so we can see through the details of this, but we're seeing some massive numbers. And at the end of 2025, which again, here we are in early 2026, we're a couple months into the year so far, but my point being is that we're seeing some of the data released for 2025 and not looking so good. Fourth quarter of the year, generally the best quarter of the year when everybody's in the holiday spirit and blowing money like it's going out of style, buying all kinds of junk for everybody that we know. I'm not sure about you, that's what it feels like anyway. But anyway, we're all out there spending all kinds of money and just having the best time of our life, right? Not really. But anyway, that's exactly what we're seeing here. And it was not necessarily a very merry time in the fourth quarter of last year, 2025. Let's pop this article up right here, right now. Feel free to read through the details on this. I'm going to pull out some key numbers that I want you to understand here. All right, so as of the fourth quarter of 2025, and again, this is nuts to look at these numbers. These are huge numbers. Consumer debt, as in consumers being you and me and the other roughly 335 million people in this country. Consumer debt in the fourth quarter, just the fourth quarter of 2025, increased by an additional $191 billion just in the fourth quarter, bringing total consumer debt up to $18.8 trillion. That's how much debt we have collectively as the consumer. That's nuts. Just under $19 trillion in debt. We're not talking about national debt. We're not talking about the government's debt. We're talking about us, the consumer, you and me and everybody else out there, right? So that's that. Now, credit card debt also increased by $44 billion in the last quarter of 2025, bringing total credit card debt up to roughly $1.28 trillion by the end of 2025. And again, $44 billion just on credit cards. Let me put that into perspective. That's about $15 billion a month of credit card debt that is being added up. That's about $500 million a day that is being literally added up in credit card debt. So think of it that way, because these big numbers like this might think like, oh, that's like, I don't know what that really means. $500 million a day of credit card debt is being added. That's nuts. I mean, that is nuts in my opinion. That is crazy, right? Not only that, mortgages. We added an additional $98 billion of mortgage debt in the fourth quarter of 2025, bringing total mortgage debt up to $13.17 trillion. Now, obviously, mortgage debt is a huge one there, but again, people taking on these huge mortgages and a lot of years of debt that they'll need to continue to pay on during this time when interest rates are sitting, and again, about 6.5%, give or take a little bit. 6.25%, 6.5%. That's a lot of money that people are blowing on mortgages and literally blowing on interest payments at these higher interest rates compared to what they were just a handful of years ago when we were literally sub 3% on mortgage rates. Again, not bad. I mean, they're more than doubled now from what they were just a few years ago, okay? Now, again, is this sustainable? Nada, not whatsoever. Now, as you saw in that report that I popped up there in that screen record and that screenshot, Here's what's interesting. In the fourth quarter of 2025, again, that's what we're referring to here with all this data, is that retail sales came in flat. Wait, retail sales came in flat? Yes, they were anticipating from November to December, they were anticipating an increase of 0.04% of retail sales increase from in December over November. Guess what they got? Nothing. Flat. So during the time of year when we, the consumer, are supposed to be out there at the malls doing all the shopping with a big old happy smile on our face, buying all kinds of junk, and that we're going to give to a bunch of people, right? This is what we're doing. And meanwhile, we saw flat retail sales in December over November. What does that tell us? It tells us that people are tapped out. It tells us that people are not buying at the magnitude of what they anticipate us to be buying at. And what that's telling us is that more and more and more people are pulling back on their spending. They're spending money more on necessities, not so much discretionaries, right? The more of the I needs versus the I wants. And that is exactly what brings in these major economic contractions and major economic recessions that we've been talking about, because when the consumer pulls back, guess what happens? This is when the doom loop starts. I just had a video out maybe was it 2 weeks ago or so? A week ago? Whatever it was. I don't know. I had a video recently where I was talking about some other economic data released by the Federal Reserve. And again, in that title, I said something about a doom loop, right? Point being is that this is when the doom loop starts. When consumers pull back, guess what? Now retailers are saying, hey, we're not seeing the volumes. We're not seeing the foot traffic. We're not seeing the sales. What that really means is we're not getting the revenue that we need to maintain the payrolls and to cover all the bills. Hey, guess what? We're going to lay off 5 people, 10 people, 1,000 people, 5,000 people, 10,000 people. They lay these people off. Then guess what happens? More and more people who have an instant reduction to their income because now they're laid off and they're collecting unemployment, which is only about 40% of their take-home pay, of their pay. Now they have to say the same thing. Income got a reduction. We need to cut back on spending. Now all these extra people cut back on spending, and then more and more retailers are saying, we don't have the sales, we don't have the revenue, we don't have the margins, we can't have this many people on payroll because that's our biggest line item of expenditures. We got to lay people off. And then the loop continues on and on and on. More and more people getting laid off, less and less people spending, more and more people getting laid off, more and more people not spending, and the loop continues, right? And then we get into a big, nasty, vicious economic recessionary cycle. And that's kind of what's starting here, okay? Anyway, I'm not here to sit here and be like, oh, we got so much bad news. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we got to look at the data. It's very important to look at this data because when we enter into a major economic contraction or a recession, that's when they fire up the printing press. They print tons and tons of money. Like what we saw back in early 2021, they printed roughly $6 trillion, about 20% of the money supply in literally a 1-year period of time. They pushed a lot of that money out in a lot of different ways, and they stimulated like crazy. They're going to do the same thing next time. The only thing that's going to change is how much they print, and it's going to be even more than they did last time. It's going to be nuts to see what happens, and we're going to go through the same major economic destruction, the major destruction of the purchasing power of the dollar because of too much printing, and therefore it's going to cause inflation and depletion of purchasing power or devaluing of our dollars. Make sense? Anything? Basically the exact same thing we just went through over the last several years, but it's going to be even greater and more extreme this next time around. Anyway, I just want you to see the data as it's coming out here so we can all be on the same page, so we can all recognize what is actually going on. Anyway, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. If you have not done so, please consider subscribing. Subscribe button right down below the video. Please share the video. Check out the other 6,000 plus videos here on the channel in the video library. Until next time, have a nice day. Take care. Have a good one. And I'll catch you later in the next